Hello and welcome to today's live cast. It is Wednesday, September 9th, and I'm Jamie from Stonemaier Games, and I'm here to share Stonemaier Games news, discuss some random topics, and answer any questions that you have about pretty much anything, as long as I am able to answer them. So, what do we have going on this week? Um, my Sunday sit down video from this past week was about travel friendly games. So, games that I think travel well based on their size, in terms of packaging, the amount of space they take up, how bad it is if you lose one of the components while you're traveling, things like that. And that was a fun list to make, to think about. Even though I've done very little traveling over the last 6 months. Um, it's fun to think about a future when I am able to travel again and can bring some games along the way that play two-player, maybe play higher counts if we want to invite in some strangers or travel with more people. And Steven mentioned the idea of having at least a few games that you can play solo in case you need some quiet moments on the trip to just relax and play a game by yourself. So I thought that was a good idea. I didn't think about that when I made the list. Have some people joining us today. Looks like Tony, Jim, Renee, Chris, George. Thanks for joining me for today's chat. Abe says, any updates on the Tapestry expansion being added to Tabletopia? Currently, Abe, we are receiving the Tapestry expansion at our fulfillment centers. I think the only one that's arrived at a fulfillment center so far is D6 in Canada, and they've started shipping out the expansion. So once it arrives in the UK, which I think might have actually been earlier this week in the UK too, the Tabletopia order is among those. And the reason I say Tabletopia order is that Tabletopia actually needs a copy of the game so they can do a 3D scan of the miniatures and then incorporate them into the Tabletopia version of the game. So it's going to be a while. It's probably going to be a month or two before they actually are ready to present the Tabletopia version of the Tapestry expansion. Douglas says, is there Wingspan expansion news? I can say that Wingspan Oceania expansion, that new expansion, I will start to talk about it on September 30th. So that is the day that I will start to reveal what is actually in this expansion. Evan asked for updates on Pendulum in Canada. Evan, we are waiting to hear exactly when the air freight shipment actually arrives. The estimate before it shipped was the 10th, so that's tomorrow. And if it actually arrives tomorrow at D6, D6 is ready to start shipping it out right away. But we don't exactly know. We don't want to trust that date until it actually happens. So when it happens, we will let you know, hopefully with an update tomorrow or the next day. Yeah. Let's see. I think I missed a question. Chris asked how the cats are doing. You can kind of see Walter in the background there. He's smelling some stuff on the floor as he does. And Chris says that his cats are doing well. That's great to hear, Chris. Carlos says that yesterday was his first play of Pendulum. Oh, he just has a nice comment here about Pendulum. Had fun with Pendulum. Thank you for trying it and playing it, Carlos. Yeah, I'm excited to hear what people think about Pendulum, whether it's in the comments here, whether it's on Board Game Geek or in the Pendulum Facebook group. I'm excited to see that it's getting to tables worldwide, and I know that the designer Travis is very excited about that as well. So I talked about my Sunday sit-down video this past week. And the upcoming video is actually my new coworker, Alex Schmidt, our new director of sales. His top 10 favorite games will be this coming Sunday. So it's a list that I present, but Alex thought about it in great detail and presented some detailed thoughts about his honorable mentions and his top 10. So you get to learn what Alex thinks about games and what his favorite games are. So I'm excited to share that. Tony asked if the Tapestry expansion in North America has begun shipping yet. In Canada, it has, but in the U.S., we're expecting the shipment to arrive at our fulfillment center today, which means they will start shipping it later this week. But I don't actually know yet if that's going to happen. We're waiting on an update for that. So you'll know when your order ships when you get a tracking number, which should be in a couple days, if not early next week. Adil says, how many games do I have in my collection? Do I have any shelfies? I do have some shelfies on Instagram. If you want to look at Instagram at Jamie Stegmaier, I have some shelfies there over the ages. I have one 4x4 Kallax shelf over here, just off camera, that has, I don't know, around 50 games. And then I have a shelf in here that has some smaller games, probably another 30 games, and then a shelf of around 20 unplayed games, and then a shelf of Stonemaier games. There are 10 different Stonemaier games. So in total, probably around 100 games right now. Around that amount? Yeah. Douglas asked for a date of Tapestry on Board Game Arena. I have no idea. That's totally up to Board Game Arena. I know they're actively working on it, but yeah, hopefully by the end of 2020. Nathan says, what's been my favorite mission in the crew? Yeah, we're halfway through the crew. Crew is 50 missions. I'm really enjoying it. I did my video about that on yesterday, on Tuesday. And so, what has been my favorite mission so far? There have been some really interesting ones. Um, I think there was one involving face down cards that I thought was really clever, but I can't remember exactly what it was. What is yours, Nathan, if you have one that really stood out? I don't know if I have one that super stood out, although if I look through the book, I bet I'd be like, oh, that one was pretty cool to do. But I can't think of one right now. George says the people in the UK have already started to receive their copies of Tapestry expansion. And you're right, yeah. Spiral Galaxy did receive their copies for fulfillment. I believe it was yesterday, and they started shipping them then. So I'm glad to hear that people are starting to receive that. Usually the UK is actually slower to receive games than the US, so that's a testament to how weird freight shipping is right now based on COVID. Brist asked about actually the next topic I was going to cover, which was any games that I played over the weekend. I played 2 games over the weekend. I played Small World of Warcraft, the new version of Small World. Megan was a big World of Warcraft player back in the day, and I had played Small World, so I thought it would be fun to experience the World of Warcraft through the Small World mechanisms. And we had a lot of fun with it as a 2-player game. And we also played a few games of Magic Jumpstart. This is the new Magic set that's kind of like Smash Up, where you open 2 decks that are themed and then you smash them together, you mix them together, and you just start playing. And so I played the Rogue Dogs and then the Devilish Dogs. I only won with the Rogue Dogs. The Devil Dogs didn't work out so well. Megan was playing with Unicorn Dinosaurs and then tree-hugging unicorns, which I thought was a fun deck. And both of them beat my Devilish Dogs. I also played some disc golf on Monday, this past weekend, Labor Day. I had a nice disc golf session at Wilmore Park here in St. Louis. Just scrolling through looking for questions here. Erica says, will the Wingspan expansion be included with Wingspan Digital? That's a good question, Erica. I think we are separate from the developer that's working on the game, but I think, if I remember correctly, that they were working on the European expansion at the same time as the core game. I don't think it will be included. I'm guessing it will be an additional purchase, but don't take me on my word of that. I just have a feeling from what I recall that they said that they were working on both at the same time, but I don't know if both will be included on launch day. Launch day for that on Steam is coming up quite soon. They gave me the date of September 17th, so that is just, 8 days away. So September 17th for the Steam release of Wingspan Digital, and then with Switch and iOS and Android to follow soon after that. That's the latest update that I have. I also heard recently that Scythe will be released on iOS worldwide instead of just regional. It's in some regions right now, but not others, on September 16th. So the 16th and the 17th should hopefully be some good days for digital gamers of Stonemaier Games. Wesley said, what is my favorite game or the game that you've played the most ever? Well, Wesley, I just very recently did my top 10 list, and I'm already blanking on which game I put at number 1. What game did I put at number 1? Let's see, I might have to look that up. Yeah, let me look that up so I give you the real answer here. I'm looking at my YouTube channel right now, so there is a YouTube video about this. I'm biding my time. So I did my top 10 favorite games as of August 2020, last week, so about 9 days ago now. And at number 1, I did a little cheat here. I did 7 Wonders Duel and 7 Wonders. And one big caveat on this list is that I only counted games that I've actually played over the last 6 months. So that was limited to games that I played 2-player, games that I played digitally, and that's pretty much it, because I haven't played many other games in person over the last 6 months. So 7 Wonders Duel and 7 Wonders are the games that I'd put at my number 1 slot right now. And the games that I played the most ever, probably poker. Poker, maybe Magic or poker. Mihir says, which of your designed games is Megan's favorite? Which of the games that I've designed is Megan's favorite? Which one is it? So Tapestry. Tapestry. She says Tapestry. I can hear her from the other room. Thank you, Megan. Chad says, I know 2021 is still far away, but How many new releases do you expect to have? You know, Chad, our typical pattern is to release one or two new games each year, and then maybe 2 to 3 expansions every year, maybe at an average of 2 expansions every year. So I would say that's our path for 2021 right now as well. It might vary a little bit because I know that we have a release that should happen. I don't want to say anything yet. A lot can change. Like even though we have a release that I think should be available at the end of maybe the first quarter of 2021, if we miss the Chinese New Year for production times, that game won't be released until the end of Q2. It can make a huge difference there. So hard to say yet, and that could impact our entire production schedule for the rest of the year, in production and release schedule. We had a fun weekend this weekend where we watched a bunch of live action Disney remakes. So we started with Mulan, and then we watched Beauty and the Beast, and then Cinderella. I think I'm doing those in the correct order that we watched them. So that was kind of fun to see what Disney has done with those releases. I know there's some controversy right now involving Mulan, but as entertainment, it was a beautiful and great movie to watch. And I was also really impressed by Cinderella, which has a very simple story, but the movie itself was really well done. And Beauty and the Beast was great as well. Disney, I think, has done a great job with those live action remakes. Sean says, have I considered releasing a board game digitally at the same time as the tabletop version is released? Normally, Stonemaier Games does the digital version much later. And really, technically, we don't. Stonemaier Games doesn't ever do the digital games at all. We sign away the release, the rights to other companies, and that's usually why it takes a long time for those companies to put the games out, because usually they want to see, hey, is this game going to draw enough of an audience to justify all of the time and expense that they will put into making the digital version of the game. And so it's an unknown entity before the release. They would need to start working on it, I mean, at least 6 months before the release of the game, and sometimes even a year, 2 years in advance. And 2 years in advance of the release, we haven't even finished the game yet. So I don't think it'll ever happen at the same time unless we release a very, very simple game, which might happen. We are working on Rolling Realms, so it's possible that Rolling Realms, a digital version of Rolling Realms, could be released at the same time as the tabletop version. I think that's maybe our best shot at it. Thank you, Cody, for posting my recent video about The Crew, a game that we've really enjoyed. And that was also near the top of my list of favorite games to travel with. I think The Crew would be a lot of fun to travel with. Briss says, how often do I go back to your collection of games to add new games or get rid of others? I buy games all the time, both on Kickstarter and games that are just in stock or games that I'm pre-ordering from various publishers. So I wouldn't say it's like a process of going to my collection and saying, hey, what do I need right now? It's just if I get excited about a game, I back it or I buy it. I do go back to my collection around once a year, and I'm approaching that time of the year right now, where I need to look at it and say, if I haven't played a game in the last year, I want to give it to someone who is excited to play that game. So I might start doing that process in the near future. I'm looking at my collection over here. So there's some games that I love, but I just don't get to the table anymore, and I don't want to have games just sitting on the shelf when they could be being played by someone who really enjoys them. So I will start that process very soon. Darren says, is my plan for 2021 still 2 new games? That is still the plan for 2021. Yeah. Maxime also asked, when will we have more information about the new Wingspan expansion? I will start talking about it on September 30th. So coming up pretty soon when I'll start talking about what is in the expansion. I did a post on Labor Day the other day about different perks and principles that we use for my coworkers, for my employees, my coworkers at Stonemaier Games. I have 2 full-time coworkers now, Joe and Alex, and I wanted to share some of the things on Labor Day in the U.S. that I try to do to show my appreciation for them and to create a healthy and welcoming and hopefully lasting working environment for them. So if you're curious about how Stonemaier Games treats our employees, feel free to check out the blog post that I posted on the Stonemaier Games blog on Monday this week. Wes says, do I think games on Tabletopia have a positive or negative impact on sales? By and large, I think that digital versions of games, including Tabletopia, have a positive impact on cardboard sales. I think that's a pretty broad generalization there. I don't have a lot of data except for data from years ago from Ticket to Ride to back that up, and that was before Tabletopia specifically. I certainly think it is possible that people might play games on Tabletopia and realize, hey, this game just isn't for me. But I think that's actually good for the industry. Rather than having someone blindly buy a game and discover they don't like it, if they play it on Tabletopia and realize, hey, this game just isn't a good fit, then they've kind of saved everyone a lot of time and trouble, or some time and trouble. But they have ultimately cost the publisher a sale if they do that. So I don't know. I think in the end it probably evens out. I think probably some people decide I don't want this game after trying it on Tabletopia. I think some people decide, hey, I really want to get this game on my table now that I played it on Tabletopia. And in the end, I think it's a good benefit for people to be able to have access to games on Tabletopia to make that decision for themselves. So I think in the end it's probably about even, but maybe edging on the side of being positive. But I'd love to see more data about that. Renee says, are there any Kickstarters that I received recently that I want to talk about or those that I managed to play? I did play Calico last weekend, not this past weekend, but the previous weekend. That was a Kickstarter game that I backed. Really, really beautiful game. Reminded me a little bit of the Azul series of games, but in an interesting way. You'll see a YouTube video about it pretty soon. But it's a very odd game, and that you go into it thinking, oh, I'm going to accomplish all these goals, because there are all these spatial goals that you can accomplish related to shapes and patterns. And then you quickly realize that you can barely accomplish any of them. It's very difficult to accomplish the various goals in Calico. That is from a first play impression, but I think that's pretty accurate for Calico. I think it's just designed to be a very tight game. So very interesting to play there. Any games that I backed on Kickstarter, I did get a notification about Tidal Blades recently, so I'm really excited to get that. I backed that, a couple of years ago now. What else? What else have I recently backed? I just pulled up Kickstarter here. I backed a book called The Tempered Steel of Antiquity, which was compared to Red Rising and I think Brandon Sanderson's works, which was a great hook for me. I also backed another book called Robin Volume 1, which is a take on the legend of Robin Hood, but Robin Hood is female in this graphic novel, so I thought that was sounding pretty cool. I also backed, I think this is still going, maybe not. Let's see if it's still going. Glenmore 2, the Highland games. I already own Glenmore 2. I love it, and I wanted to add the expansion to it. Yeah, I think those are the games that are still active on Kickstarter. Oh, no, it's no longer active. It did complete funding a few days ago. Yeah, so that was no longer active, but I am excited about that one. Oh, what about you, though, Renee, and anyone else? What's the most recent Kickstarter you backed, and why are you excited about it? Anthony says, a while ago you made a blog about what if you could only make 10 games like Tarantino has said he's only going to make 10 movies. Would you count Rolling Realms as one of them? Sure, yeah, I would count Rolling Realms as one of them. Given, I don't know if I will actually stick to that idea, but I love the psychology, the mentality of saying, I'm not going to make as many games as possible. I'm going to try to make 10 great games, or whatever X is, whatever 10, 15, 5, 1. I'm going to try to make that many great games, and I will be that's my goal. So that has been in the back of my mind over the last few years, that if I am able to make 10 games that I am really happy with and that bring joy to a lot of people, I will be really, really happy with my career as a game designer and publisher. I am already happy with it, but yeah, Rolling Realms I would count as it. It's very different than any game that I thought I'd ever make, but I like the challenge of designing a game like Rolling Realms that scales up to any number of players. That's hard to do, I think, and I've had a lot of fun with the design process of it. Dan says, why are Stonemaier games more expensive to buy on the Stonemaier games website than on other retailers? Shouldn't it be cheaper because you're cutting out the middleman? That is a great question, Dan, and a great point. You're absolutely right. The games on our website should be cheaper because we are not selling them through an intermediary on our website. It's just, we produce the game, we ship it to our fulfillment centers, and then we sell it. The challenge, though, is navigating our relationships with distributors and retailers. And that's something I've been examining a lot lately. So if we sell a game let's look at Viticulture, for example. Viticulture is a game that is a $60 MSRP game. And it's the $60 MSRP game because when a distributor buys it from us, they get a 60% discount. So a distributor pays us $24 for a copy of Viticulture. Viticulture costs around $14 to make and freight ship. And so when a distributor buys it from us, we get a profit margin of around $10. and we usually spend that $10 to make more copies of Viticulture. Um, and so we could sell Viticulture on our website for $25, and it would be more profitable than selling to a distributor. But distributors probably wouldn't be very happy about that, and they might stop buying Viticulture from us altogether. And so we could sell it for $30, but then retailers probably aren't going to be really happy about that at all, because retailers are buying it from the distributor for 50% off, and so they won't be happy about that either. And so we try to sell our games for close to MSRP. In fact, for a long time, I sold our games at full MSRP on our website, except for during the pre-order period. But I've started to change that a little bit because I think you're right. I don't think we should be expected to sell at full MSRP, given that our margins are so great when we're able to sell directly. So while I don't constantly monitor the prices on Amazon and Miniature Market and other websites like that, I do want people to feel good about buying directly from us when they do. But I also want people to be able to buy from the source that feels right to them. So if you are happier buying games on Amazon, so be it. If you're happy to buy games from your local retailer, that's awesome too. If you want to buy games directly from Stonemaier and you're satisfied with how that process goes, I want you to have a fair price when that happens. And so we've been thinking about that and working on that a lot. I think that's a great question. And even though you said it wasn't a criticism, I think it's a valid criticism. Why do publishers sell games for full MSRP when they don't have the middleman for selling those games? So that's something that we've been looking at a lot recently. Nathaniel says, any chances for a Stonemaier themed custom disc posted on the site for Kickstarter add-ons, perhaps a pre-order? Oh yeah, we don't do Kickstarter, Nathaniel, but and disc golf is just a little hobby of mine, really over the last couple months. So I don't think there's any plans for that, but maybe that could be a fun like April Fool's type product that we do in the near future. I'd have to see how many Stonemaier fans are also disc golf fans and how many discs that we would need to make that possible. It would probably be pond themed because nearly half the discs that I've acquired have ended up in various ponds so far. Tony has a long question about, can I confirm that, okay, let's see. Someone mentioned that on that one side of the tokens has an edge on it specifically to help with tokens moving too easily on the mats. There's an edge on it. Talking about player mats and token scattering. No, the tokens weren't designed with a special reason to not be moved, but we did put a special coating on the player mats themselves to make it less likely that tokens would slide around. Jason says, did I miss the chocolate of the week? You did. I didn't mention a chocolate of the week today. I'm going to go with, I know I've mentioned this one before, but I love this chocolate. This is XOXO salted almond butter in dark chocolate. I believe it's a 55% dark chocolate, which is really nice. This is a nice creamy dark chocolate. I haven't opened this one yet, but I will maybe treat myself to a square or two after I'm done with this live cast. David says, any news about the Canadian shipments? David's talking about, I think maybe about Pendulum. The Tapestry expansion has started shipping in Canada to Champions. And Pendulum, I am waiting. I'm looking at my email over here. I do not see it. I am waiting to hear from anyone really to confirm that the air freight shipment has arrived or will arrive. The estimated date that I heard was that it was going to arrive tomorrow, but I don't know if that was arrive in Canada or at D6, the fulfillment center, tomorrow. Gray says, am I excited about the Fantasy Realms expansion? I did not know there was a Fantasy Realms expansion, and I'm definitely excited about it now. What is it called? Yeah, I'll make a note of that because I want that immediately. Yeah. I didn't hear about that. I'll jump back to questions in a second. Let's see if there's anything. I have had some great game design time recently on one of the games that I've been working on. I always bounce back and forth between two games. And expansions and things like that. But there's one game that I've made some really good progress on lately, and can't talk about it. I'm talking about it in very vague words. Also been working on Rolling Realms, more playtesting for Rolling Realms. That's going well. I think that's all the Stonemaier games, like behind the scenes stuff that's going on right now, but maybe I'll think of something else. Oh, I also did a blog post the other day with some polls. One of the polls was inspired by this Facebook live chat. Someone said, had a comment about 3D printers and about whether or not there are enough people who have 3D printers right now that they could just print the components for a game rather than including those components in a game. So I did a poll, and it turns out that most people either don't have 3D printers or they wouldn't want to print the core components for a game. They would only maybe want to print enhanced components for a game, and that was a very small percentage of people who have 3D printers and would want to do that. I also asked about how many people have upgraded shipping in the past. So if you have a default shipping option and it's $10 and you can get faster shipping or choose a different courier for an extra charge, how many people have actually done that? And the number was actually surprisingly low. I think it's somewhat circumstantial that people do that, but most people said rarely or never. And this is actually really, really interesting. I asked people about stretch goals because for a long time I've perceived stretch goals as a key part of Kickstarter. That's a huge part of the Kickstarter environment. That you have these stretch goals that make the game better, but the vast majority of people who answered the poll said that they would rather have the best possible version of the game available from day one and maybe have the creator talk about all those different elements from day to day, from update to update, but just to have it from day one instead of feeling like they need to go through this series of stretch goals to get to it. That really surprised me because that's been such a big part of Kickstarter for so long. But it was kind of exciting for me to see that people, maybe backers, are moving away from feeling the need to have stretch goals and they just want the best possible version of the game, whether it's the standard version or the deluxe version from day one. Edgar says, which game you love that doesn't have an expansion do I wish would get an expansion? Well, Edgar, I hadn't thought about it. Someone actually asked that last week. I didn't have a great answer for it, but Gray just mentioned Fantasy Realms, and that is a game that I would love to have an expansion for, especially if it's just more cards to shuffle into the deck, super easy to add. That would be amazing. So I would love to have a Fantasy Realms expansion. It sounds like it's becoming a reality, so that's fantastic. Mo says, please share some news regarding Wingspan Oceania. Yeah, Mo, we will start talking about the Wingspan expansion on September 30th. So that's my news for today. Officially, the date that we'll start talking about it is September 30th. Ed says, have I played the Targi expansion yet? I have not, no. Edgar says, how are my cats? Not seeing them on screen today. Walter was on screen, on camera at the very beginning of the chat. Yeah, I think they're doing pretty well today. Walter was a little feisty earlier, but he's doing better now. And Biddy, I think he's doing okay. Yeah. Abe says, he's assuming that I've seen the new re-release of Seven Wonders. Or the reprinted version. Do I think Stonemaier would ever do anything similar with any of our games? We don't have any plans to do that. I think it's neat that they did it. I don't know if it was necessary, but yeah, they cleaned up some things that maybe could benefit from being cleaned up a bit. I don't know. I think it's tough to do. It's tough for me to come to terms with doing that for a game because, for example, say we did a new version of Viticulture or like a reprinted version of Viticulture where we cleaned up some things and changed some things. That impacts a lot of other elements. It impacts all the expansions that we have for Viticulture. It gives people who already own Viticulture a tough decision there. Do they buy the new version? Do they keep the old one? And do you continue to support the old version or only the new version? So I'd rather just get it right the first time. And if we have to tweak something in an expansion, or, I don't know, include a special promo pack later to fix something, so be it. But I'd rather get the core elements of the game right the first time. I know that's almost impossible to get everything right, but to get it as right as possible. Ollie says, I have a question. Have you played Iron Harvest at all? And what is its relation to Scythe? Were you involved at all? The game story is very good. No, I wasn't involved at all. I have no direct connection to Iron Harvest at all. Iron Harvest is a video game set in the same world as Scythe. Both of these are licensed properties from Jakob. So Jakob's the hub. I licensed the tabletop rights for Scythe. And then years later, I think after they saw the success of Scythe, a company called King Arts Game licensed his world for a video game. I have not played the game. I've seen the trailer for it. It looks awesome, but I haven't played it yet. I think it is out now. It came out last week, so I'm curious to see what people think about it. In fact, let's look on Metacritic to see what people are saying about Iron Harvest. It'd be cool if it's right on the homepage, but no, I don't see it right on the homepage. New games, Iron Harvest. It is there. It has a 74 on Metacritic right now, which is fine. That's what a C. So yeah, that's good. And yeah, pretty cool. That's right on their homepage. Nice. Mo says, what do I think about smartphone? I haven't played smartphone yet, but I believe the game board is dual layered. I think that looks really cool. Ben says, please address the deadly snakes issue in the Oceania expansion. Ben, you'll have to elaborate that on that a little bit. There are no snakes in the expansion, and so I am curious what you're talking about. Ollie says, when you design games now, are you actively thinking about how it might be digitally implemented? I don't. No, I don't think about that. Maybe I should, but I am focused on creating the best tabletop experience possible. And if a digital version can be made, that's great. But it's just a bonus on top. Um, he says, Wizards of the Coast, for example, does not apparently design Magic the Gathering's cards with arena in mind and not paper, or does or doesn't. You say no apparently design, so I'm not sure if they do or they don't. I have heard that. I think I suspect that Magic developers and designers will start to be influenced by arena, but maybe not. Maybe they keep that process completely separate. Darren says, do I crunch the data from playtesting in-house or do you outsource the project? I definitely crunch the data in-house, but I have also recently, over the last year almost, been working with a guy named Jeremy who is very good. His skill, his expertise is data analysis. So he looks through the playtesting data for all of our playtest reports, and he finds some stuff that I don't see, which has been really helpful, especially for asymmetric games like Tapestry. Tim says, what do I think of those acrylic overlays for Pendulum? Yeah, I saw a really nice one on the Pendulum Facebook group and looked great. Yeah, really, really cool. Martin says, is there any game you recall that was showed or offered to Stonemaier Games and later published by another company that was good, great, and successful game? There have been a few. The one that I always think of is Anachrony. An early version of Anachrony was pitched to Stonemaier Games. That's probably the biggest name game. I think there's one other one that I'm blanking on, but that's probably the biggest one that I can think of. Yeah. Hi, Zoe from Perth, Australia. Zoe says, did I write all of the story for the Rise of Fenris? And if so, what was the process for that? Also, what was the reason behind leaving the ending open without a large written outcome? Yeah, so I worked with a co-designer on The Rise of Fenris, Ryan. And Ryan, I got involved in the project because Ryan is a really talented writer. And so Ryan wrote most of it. He took a lot of the writing, he didn't take it, but we asked Jakob to fill in the story that he wanted to tell. And then Ryan took that and embellished it and wrote the kind of the full robust version of it. Jakob gave us more of an outline than a written story. As for the ending, we wanted that to be up to the players. We wanted players to, so there are outcomes in the book that say like, hey, this is the type of leader that you are since you won. But as for the story itself, it kind of concludes in chapter 8, and then there's that little snippet at the end that tells how your story, which ends up being a little bit more important than the world story, how your story ends. But hopefully that was satisfying. I don't know if that was satisfying to you or if you wanted like a greater wrap up at the end. If we did that, that's our miss there. Briss says, any Kickstarter that you've received that it has been the most disappointing to you? You know, I don't like to talk about disappointments and things like that. I think the one that I probably mentioned, the only one that I've used as an example for this, I think, was Gloomhaven, which isn't to say that Gloomhaven is a bad game by any means, but I thought Gloomhaven was something different than it was. I was really excited about kind of an open world time stories, a game where I go on a bunch of different adventures and tell stories along the way, and what Gloomhaven actually is, and it's so well known for, and it's so great at, is being a tactical combat game, which is just not the type of game that I typically gravitate towards and that I typically enjoy. So Gloomhaven was one that I was a backer in the first Kickstarter campaign, day one, super excited. Isaac is awesome. I was so excited to get it, and while I was very excited about the world building, the road events, the city events, the combat kind of wore on me very quickly because I just don't get excited about game after game of tactical combat. So that was one that, through no fault of Isaac's at all, being a disappointment. It's just I didn't read enough about the project to understand what it was and what it wasn't when I went into it. So that's the one I use because it truly is not a slight on Gloomhaven at all. It's just my mistake as a backer when I read over the Kickstarter page. George says he enjoyed reading my Kickstarter advice from Gabe's latest book. That's awesome. Yeah, Gabe Barrett put together a book of thoughts and opinions from various Kickstarter creators, and I contributed, I think, a little chapter answered some questions for that for Gabe. I haven't actually read it myself though yet. I backed it, but I don't think I have it yet. Sean says, have I considered having the other Stonemaier employees on the live feed? They're certainly always welcome to join me if they want. I do this feed from my home, and they also work from home. And whenever, in the rare times that we actually see each other these days, we all wear masks. So I don't know if that would be conducive for a live chat. But I think Alan joined me once for a very brief live chat. But usually, our schedules are very different. I wouldn't want to obligate them to come all the way out of their way to my house for just a few minutes for the live stream. Yeah, but maybe they'll appear on video someday. I don't. I think Alex is comfortable on video. I don't know if Joe really enjoys it. I know Alan doesn't enjoy it. Ivan says, "Have I played the digital version of Root? I haven't, but it looks beautiful. I love what they did with it." And he says, let's see, he says it's way faster than the cardboard version because the PC calculates all of your possible moves and offers it to you, removing the analysis paralysis. So yeah, I like when digital games do that. Carcassonne does a good job of doing that. And also helps you, Ivan says, it helps you ensure that you don't miss the possibility of the best move. Wesley is excited about Legacies. Yeah, I am too. Oh, no. There's a game called Legacy that was on Kickstarter last year. Maybe Legacies is a different game. I'm thinking of Legacy, I believe, from Brooksprun Games. Jason over there did, I believe it's called Legacy. It might be Legacies. But it was on Kickstarter a while ago, not recently. Briss says, are there any gaming mechanisms that I unintentionally shy away from? Probably, yeah. I mean, there's certainly. I did a video a while ago about like my top 10, maybe it was more than that, top 14, top 15 gaming exceptions. So they were mechanisms or themes of games that I generally don't enjoy, and then I shared in that video. Here's an exception to that rule, and so I mentioned a bunch of things on that video that I think would answer this question. One of them, I think, is combat. I just mentioned that I don't love tactical combat. That's something that I don't gravitate towards. So I don't think that's unintentional that I shy away from it. It's almost rather intentional that I just don't get excited about it. So I'm not going to design around tactical combat in my games. Cody popped up with the video I made a couple years ago about what if I could only make 10 games in my career. Martin says, is there any Stonemaier game that you would assure it is finished and they would no longer have expansions published or soon to be discontinued? Well, we have actually done that for Scythe. We're not discontinuing Scythe, but we've finished telling the story of Scythe, and so we wrapped up the tabletop game known as Scythe is complete in terms of the story. So we are continuing to reprint Scythe but not make new content for it. Lots of people are commenting with what they backed on Kickstarter recently. Mike says he's excited to see me for the Board Game Binge interview tomorrow. I am excited about that too. I just got an email about that, I believe, about Board Game Binge, or maybe that was just a reminder. And I was just on a podcast a few minutes ago with someone in Brazil who goes by the Game Father podcast in Brazil. So that was a lot of fun to talk with him this morning. Yeah, here we go. My chat tomorrow is with James for the Board Game Binge. I'm looking forward to that. Bowen says, if I could co-design a game with any current game designer, who would it be? Well, I did design a game recently with Alex Schmidt, the newest employee at Stonemaier Games, and had a great time with that. Alex was a lot of fun to co-design with. I have mentioned that it would be awesome to co-design a game with Rob Daviau or Alexander Pfister. In principle, I don't know how our styles of design would actually mesh together if we were designing together, but I do really love those designers as designers, and so I think it would be cool to design with them. But there are others too. Ryan Lockett, I think, would be a lot of fun to design with too. Keith Matasia, I think he would be awesome to co-design with. Tim says, if I were to do a similar question here, if I were to do another collaboration game like Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig, what games would you be interested in combining? What games would I be interested in combining? It might be neat to do someday like a tapestry expansion where the civilizations are based on actual worlds of other games, or I guess even the civs aren't really worlds, but they're themed based on different concepts. But yeah, it would be cool to say, this is the Dead of Winter civilization. This is the Small World civilization in Tapestry. That might be cool. I don't have a specific other game I'm thinking of here, Tim. I do really love Clank. Clank continues to be one of my favorite games, so I really do love that. That would be cool to mash together with something. and role player. I think the role player universe. I don't know. I wouldn't want to go into the role player universe because it's so self-contained and awesome. Yep, I don't know. There's a lot of great games out there. Chris says if he purchased a Stonemaier disc golf gift, it would end up being unintentionally advertising. It would end up being unintentional advertising for whoever finds it in the woods. Well, I'm fine with that. Bobby says, when can we expect, oh, another disc golf question, when can we expect a disc golf dexterity engine building Stonemaier game? There is a kind of disc golf like game called Mars Open, which is a dexterity flicking game that does actually feel a bit like disc golf. Burst asks for my most hated game of all time. I don't talk about games that I hate, so I don't even think about that. Renee says it has a dispatch notification. Cody says, I know you don't love exclusives. Cody is correct. I don't. I've done some searching on how I can get certain Between Two Cities tokens, and I haven't had any luck. Any insight if you can offer on where I can get these 3 tokens? Yeah, so here's the weird thing about a few, so this is an example where we made tokens for Between Two Cities, the Between Two Cities project on Kickstarter, and they're not exclusive. So we didn't say we're never making these again. We didn't say these are only for Kickstarter backers. But we have said we will only make these if there's justifiable demand for them. And I don't know if there is, Cody. I don't know if there's justifiable demand for us to make another print run just of those tokens for Between Two Cities. So right now, I don't know where you can get them. I will check to see if I happen to have some spares, but I think my spares got exhausted a while ago for cities. So you're looking for Dallas. I don't remember doing Dallas Courthouse. Himeji and Tantrum. Oh, Dallas and Tantrum. Tantrum is for Tantrum House in South Carolina. And Dallas was for BGG Con, I believe. So I don't even know if I have any of those. Himeji, maybe I have. I'll have to check and see. Rachel says, is there an update on the Wingspan expansion? Yes, I will start talking about what's in the Wingspan Oceania expansion on September 30th. Looks like we have a fussy cat here, so he's going to make an appearance. Here's Walter making an appearance here. So Walter will answer the next question. Oh, sorry, Walter. Martin says, have I checked out the Monsters on Board? It just launched on Kickstarter. You know, Martin, I got a notification for that just as I went live here. Oh, Walter definitely wants to get down. But I haven't actually checked it out, Martin. So I just got that as I went live. But I'll have to check that out. Ernani says, what would you think about selling a game with components for 1 to 2 players and then selling separate player pieces for people willing to play for more players? You know, I thought about it a little bit recently because the core principle of some arguments is we publish games that can be played for 1 to 5 players, right? But I do know that there are a fair number of games that people only play with 2 players, even though they play up at higher player counts. So I think that's a good question. Like, is there a way to sell games that very easily scale without overselling someone if they're only going to play with 2 players? Like Viticulture, for example. If you're only going to play Viticulture with 2 players, you don't need the components, the wooden pieces, for 3 to 6 players. You don't even need, I mean, the game board itself could be different if you're only playing with 2. But if you do that, then you're almost ensuring that they're never going to play it with more than that. Because if I see a game that I think, okay, I'll mostly play this with 2, I'm just going to buy components for 2 players. I'm not going to buy more than that. But the day may come where someone says, hey, I want to play that with you too. And then I have to say, no, I don't have the components for it. So I don't know if we would ever do that. But it has been on my mind a little bit recently about, and I am going to look at our demographic survey this year to see how many people say that they are now just primarily playing games with 2 players. And maybe that will impact our strategy moving forward. Kurt says, when is Tapestry expansion? Tapestry expansion is now. It is shipping from Canada and the UK to Canada and Europe. And I don't have a notification yet, but the US version should be arriving at our fulfillment center this week. And Australia should also arrive later this week or early next week. And then it'll start shipping right away to not backers, but pre-order customers. Alex says, what is the best way to go about pitching a game design to a publisher? That's a good question, Alex. I would say the number one thing is pick a few publishers you love and who make games that are similar to your game, but not too similar, and look at their submission guidelines. The best way to pitch to a publisher is to look at how they want to be pitched because every publisher is different. So, yeah, I would say that's the best way. Darren says, do I crunch the data from playtesting? Oh, same question as before. Got to that one a little bit earlier. Anthony says, is there a date for the Scythe hardcover rulebook yet? So we had some internal mistakes that I take responsibility for regarding the Scythe rulebook, and it's required us to go back and work on it a little bit more. So I don't have a date for it yet. We had printed it, but we will not be using that printing. We will be reprinting the spiral-bound version and the hardcover version. If you don't play Automa, the version that we already released in Spiral Bound is perfectly fine. But there were some issues with Automa that were my responsibility that we are now having to fix. And we're going to fix that with the hardcover version. So we're probably looking at early 2021 at this point. Evan says, when balancing the new civilizations in the Tapestry expansion, what do you do to try to keep the Civ's abilities even? Really, it does come down to playtesting. It starts out with a gut feel, and then we get a lot of data about it. Is this civilization balance compared to other civilizations in the expansion and other civilizations in the core game? And so we just play tested it a ton and tried to use that data to see if we're on the right track. Let's see. Oh, Nathan is touching back. He asked me what my favorite mission is in the game The Crew, and he says he really likes the ones where no colored nines can win a trick or all colored ones must win tricks. Oh yeah, those were fun. Yeah, we have had a few of those. Those were fun. Morgan says, if you ever make the open world time stories of my dreams, I humbly volunteer to be in your first playtest group and second. And Morgan, I can say that I appreciate that, and I would love to have you as a playtester, and that is happening. Yeah, I'm working on it now. Sounds like Kurt played Viticulture Essentials and Wingspan all weekend and taught some people. That's wonderful. Thanks for playing it, having fun with it, and with sharing it with those games with other people. Mitchell says, when will Scythe be released on iOS in the US? What I heard from the digital developer is that it will be available on September 16th, so just 8 days from now. Darren says, would I ever design a legacy-style game using your current IP? I would, and I have. It's called Charterstone. So Charterstone is a legacy game that I've already designed and published. So it's out there. Briss says, favorite gaming convention to go to? I love Geekway to the West in St. Louis. It's the type of convention where you just go and play games for 4 days, and I love that. I've had a great time at Geekway to the West. I'm so sorry we had to miss it this year because it didn't happen, but it'll be back next year, I think. Kurt says, if I'm giving games in my collection of other people, do I have Shadows over Camelot? I do not, no. Ruben says, with Scythe is considered completed. What about designing other games in the world of 1920 plus? I am open to doing that. Yeah, I'm definitely open to doing that. But the Scythe itself, the tabletop game, is complete. Barry says that his family just discovered Tapestry and love it. That's wonderful to hear, Barry. I'm happy for people to continue to discover Tapestry. I combine the words discover and enjoy into destroy. Luke says, have I ever read an Ember in the Ashes 4-book series? I read the first either 2 or 3 books in it, and then it kind of fell off for me. So maybe I need to return to it and finish it. But I did read at least 2 of the books, maybe 3 of the books, but I didn't finish the series. Carol's late in joining today. She says, did you see that in the new Clank expansion you can play as Mr. Whiskers? I just saw that on Tantrum House, and that looks amazing. So yeah, I am looking to get the new Clank expansion because that sounds like a lot of fun to play with as Mr. Whiskers. Max says, I'm curious why Scythe burned out faster than Viticulture. Scythe is the newer game, but Viticulture still has upcoming expansions. It's not a matter of burnout, Max. I would say that we just focused on Scythe. It really wasn't a problem. Like, I didn't go into Scythe saying, hey, we're going to do this number of expansions this amount of time. I definitely didn't do that for Viticulture either. Burnout is definitely not the right word there. We told the story of Scythe as part of an expansion trilogy, and the story was complete. And viticulture is kind of taking a more maybe a more organic path where uh, I didn't go into viticulture saying we're going to make this number of expansions. Every expansion has kind of just popped up organically over time, and viticulture doesn't have a world or a story like Scythe does, where Scythe it had a very specific world and story to tell. Adam says, "Do I start my do you start your first playtesting sessions at full player counts or start off slow with 2 to 3 players?" Traditionally, I've done the first few playtests with Alan, my co-founder, and now I have a few more coworkers, Alex and Joe. So the first few playtests might be at slightly higher player counts, up to 4 with those 3 and me. But yeah, but they'll generally be on the lower side because I don't want to subject a lot of people to the worst versions of the game, which are the earliest versions of the game. Uh, Jock says, when is Geekway to the West? Typically, it is typically in May or June, and it is here in St. Louis. Julian says, any hints on the new mechanisms in the viticulture expansion? Not yet, no. I mean, it's still very much an early work in progress. Martin says, when will we get a South America expansion for Wingspan? I don't know exactly when, but we will make a South America expansion for Wingspan. And Martin says, are bird specialists asked to help for this game? So what Elizabeth usually does when she's finding birds for a new expansion is she asks a question on the Wingspan Facebook group, and I think she has done that. She asked a very general question recently where she just asked for anyone to contribute their favorite birds in all the different regions that we haven't covered yet. So maybe look for a post by Elizabeth Hargrave in the Wingspan Facebook group about that if you want to contribute some birds that you really love. And we do typically throughout the proofreading process, we include people who know those regions and those birds really well. We definitely did that for Oceania to make sure that we were representing the birds and the culture of Australia, New Zealand, and surrounding islands to the best of our ability in that expansion. Lucas says he's been playing a lot of Tapestry against Altama and the Shadow Empire and enjoying a lot. He says he'd like to see variable achievements in the second expansion. You know, I hear that, but I think it's actually good for some things to be static, especially in a game like Tapestry where a lot of things change from game to game. I think it's good for a few things to remain the same. And so I don't foresee the achievements changing. However, with the expansion, the first expansion, we did add personal achievements where you have a short-term, kind of a mid-short-term personal goal, and if you achieve it, you get to place a specific landmark on your capital city. So that is what I thought of it instead of doing changing the global achievements. I wanted to give each player something to focus on, something specific to them to focus on that also gives them a landmark. And so those are the new landmark cards in the game. Yeah, so that's instead of having new global achievements. Shadi says, are there new mechanisms in the viticulture expansion? Yeah, of course. I think pretty much any game that we have, any expansion we have has some new mechanisms in it, even if it's a tweak on a new type of card, something like that, or a tweak on an existing card. Eric asked a similar question about Wingspan Oceania, and yes, yeah. In any expansion, you're going to have some new twist on a mechanism or a new mechanism. George says, what's my favorite auction implementation? He says he played Pan Am this past weekend and was reminded how much I liked fixed placement bidding, which he explains as bid values are on the board in fixed amounts. Players have to outbid others by placing higher, and the other player gets their pieces back to place. I have seen that. I think I've seen that in Amun-Re, I think has that. And Bruges has a similar system to that, even though it's not exactly an auction game. My favorite auction game is Ra. So I really like the auction system in Ra, how that works, which is not a fixed auction system, but it does give players only a limited way to bid. You only have a few bid tiles, and you have to just choose one of those tiles and bid. So you're not bidding from a huge amount of money. It's just one of a few tiles that you're selecting, which I think is pretty clever. John says, do I enjoy games like Brass that have a ton of player interaction? And do you recommend any of yours that are similar? I like games that give you lots of reasons to pay attention to other players. And hopefully some of that interaction is positive. Some of it might just be keeping an eye on certain things because they're going after a goal that you're going after, things like that. And maybe there's a little bit of direct interaction, but just a little bit. I would say in all of our games, I could list 10 different ways that there are reasons to pay attention to other players in our games. Are there any games like mine that are similar? I would say Euphoria is probably the most similar to Brass in terms of the way positive player interaction works in Euphoria. Yeah. Martin says, are there any sport games apart from disc golf in the works? So we don't have a disc golf game in the works. I don't think I would ever really publish a sport themed game unless it was a racing game, because I think those are typically the only sport themed games that go over well with broader audiences. And Ed says, maybe I might make this the last question here. Ed says, anything in the works for us Euphoria fans? We don't have anything in the works. Euphoria is probably done with the expansion that we released last year. That's Ignorance is Bliss. That's probably done with that. But I think the combination of that and the core game and just the variety of the tiles and the cards should give plenty of replayability for Euphoria for years to come. But you never know. Maybe something else will happen. It does look like that is the last question. Thank you all for joining me today. And I will see you next Wednesday at the same time. In the meantime, have fun playing some games, maybe some of our games, some of our expansions, or games from other publishers. And stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you next week. Take care.